There's a scene from an old TV show called The Avengers from the 1960s that for some reason has stuck with me for the past 20-something years. There's an episode in particular where there's a secret organization working underground. I believe it's under London or hidden in an old hospital that's training and arming themselves to overthrow the government and take over. And while the show very much feels like a classic old TV show, it lacks all the gritty, dark, grim reality that we've come to expect from modern stories, similar to Breaking Bad, True Detective, or pick your favorite, serial period drama or period piece where it's about, true crime is really taken over, and the more grisly and darker, Dexter is kind of taken centerfold. And so while the show The Avengers is a bit silly in some parts, it's fun, it's enjoyable. And in this particular scene, we have our heroine, Emma Peel, sneaks into the hidden underground base and comes across the sinister group preparing to overthrow the government. And they're in the middle of this training. And again, it's silly and not really, up to scale. You wouldn't actually be able to take over anything, but here we have it. And part of the training is to repeat this mantra.
Now, we must always remember the motto of our organization: seek, hate, kill.
And while this is cheesy and really feels that naivety that we kind of associate, the clear black and white morality, good versus evil, that comes from the 1950s and 60s, there's something true about those words.
Seek, hate, kill.
And when I think about stories as a whole, I try and take a step back and think, is it strange that I'm going to watch a young couple and their children be murdered by a serial killer? If somebody said it like that, I would probably look at them sideways. The kind of people who spend too much time on the internet or have been in a war-torn country or PTSD or anything like that. But then I said, don't get me wrong, this movie is not just about a serial killer. It's going to be a serial killer, and it's going to be aimed at kids and families. And then the movie title, we've already got it blocked out. It's going to be called Finding Nemo.
Where did everybody go? Coral, get inside the house, Coral. No, Coral, don't. They'll be fine. Just get inside, you, right now.
And this is the part that is so bizarre about stories, is because they have this idea, this story arc that goes through them that you never would have signed up for initially if you'd actually known what it was. Who of us would have signed up for Up if we knew exactly what it was going to take us through? I wasn't really ready to be emotionally wrecked about 5 to 10 minutes into a movie. I didn't really sign up to cry. I didn't sign up for this. Coco hit me right in the feels from there. At the end, I wasn't ready for that anxiety in The Incredibles or anything like that. All this tension and everything like that. But this is what comes aboard when we're following after a story. We're trying to figure out, we're going deep into what it is, and we're signed up for this bizarre ride that, imagine if somebody said, listen, I've got a great story for you and the kids and the wife, the husband, the family, and it's about a serial killer fish who murders everybody and then seemingly gets away forever and we never talk about it. And it's about a fish with a gimp limb, from there. And it's like, okay, this is really bizarre. I didn't think I was going to go up for this, but this is that interesting line of thought. It says you can sell people on a line that you never would have thought of because it's part of the story. There's kind of the magic of stories that we seemingly just kind of take for granted. Even something as silly as seek, hate, kill, this absurd idea and this absurd premise. And this is the interesting line of thought that kind of led me thinking about this necessity of antagonists, and I would note that by antagonist, I kind of mean probably the classical or the high school definition that I recall, a force or person or entity that stands against the protagonist, that impedes them from reaching their goal. And it's in this bizarre aspect that without antagonists, though, the stories wouldn't really mean as much. It's really bizarre about it. There's this kind of thankfulness that we as story writers and, audience have to kind of do, again, towards the serial killer fish or towards these different, villains or antagonists, specifically antagonists in this case from here, because the story wouldn't quite be the same without it. I mean, would Up be the same movie if the wife didn't die tragically? Again, it is tragic and we kind of, wish it wouldn't have happened, but at the same time, would it have been as good a story? And the answer is, of course, not. Finding Nemo, Breaking Bad, you have all these things where something negative, Hamlet, if you want to go way back to the classical, sort of things, something terrible happens. And this is where the story comes from, And at a surface level, all this kind of makes sense, but, only, kind of. Nobody really lives their life that way. Nobody goes out of their day job and thanks their idiot boss, the dumb customers who just don't understand. We do not have chicken. We haven't had chicken for the past week, and we won't. Try the fish. All these people around us who are just making our lives harder, and we don't thank them for giving our own story more meaning. But there's this bizarre reality to it. And this is what I wanted to explore in this video, is an appropriate thanks to antagonists and what they offer. The meaning that we pull from stories when there is an antagonist and there is that conflict. Oftentimes these antagonists will play the villain roles and we dislike them and hate them, long for the moment when the protagonist finally chases them down. Think of that moment in, The Patriot where Mel Gibson gets the guy finally, or that moment in The Princess Bride for Inigo Montoya finally finds the six-fingered man. And it's this moment where you realize that, in fact, we have been along for the ride because of the villains, because of the antagonists, because of this conflict that comes from it. And it's this bizarre idea where I was trying to think of, should we be thankful? Should we be more thankful for the villains, because they seem to really make the show. They make the story. This is where it really comes from. I recall being a kid and wanting to write a book or learn a language or anything, and wishing there was someone I disdained enough that I could kind of motivate myself into this rivalry, and I could motivate myself into action, because I couldn't seemingly do it itself. I couldn't force myself to sit down in front of the computer and type out the next Aragon, even if I was, 16 or 17 or 20 or 24, And so I'm not much of a Zen person, not because I don't think it's invaluable, but more because I don't really know a whole lot of it. But what I wanted from this channel was to take the realities of stories that seem to just make so much sense to us when you play out from, of course this fish is going to go across this journey to rescue his, handicapped son, and we just accept it because they're stories, even when in a situation, in our world, they would feel utterly fake and unrealistic.
Seek, hate, kill.
But when we think of our own stories, our own lives, it's strange to think of an antagonist as anything other than something that we want to be destroyed. This is something that you focus your hate towards, and you motivate yourself, and you try and drive it to the point of destruction. You want to ruin it. You want to do it. And there's this bizarre meaning that comes out of this struggle, and imagine if you don't have an antagonist. Think about the movie, John Carpenter's The Thing, and one of the things that makes it so good is because we're just frantic. We're alongside the Antarctic, this crew who's trying to hunt down this alien because it's getting ready to murder everyone. And this puts the audience in a strange situation where we want the heroes to kill the creature, but the creature's existence is what makes us love the movie as a whole. Without the Thing, we don't care about anybody. Kurt Russell's still sitting there trying to, fight against his chess computer or anything like that. And again, without it, we don't really care about anything. The antagonist is what motivates and pushes us to like and even to care about these characters. And that's a weird thought, because, what brought me here is the antagonist. What pushed me to a meaningless story that I didn't really care about, characters that I didn't care about, to something that had meaning that really impacted me personally, impacted my life. And of course, once we care about the heroes, we'll go on a journey for thousands of pages, for thousands of hours to see them reach the end, because at the point the journey matters to us, we have to seek the end. We want to see what happens to the villain. We want to see the heroes emerge victorious from the other end, because at that point we're sucked in and there is true meaning to be gained from the story. We want to see Frodo throw the ring in. We want to see, Kurt Russell get the thing. We want to see Inigo Montoya kill the bad guy, kill the man who murdered his father, who cruelly did this. And it all kind of comes back to me as a teenager, wishing there was someone to motivate me, wishing I had a rival, someone like, Naruto, Yu-Gi-Oh, or even from Fight Club with Tyler Durden, who plays this bizarre, rival / motivation aspect where you see this plays off it and you want somebody to motivate you like that. Because then what on earth could we accomplish? At that point, it really seems like we could change and move mountains. And it's this bizarre necessity behind the existence of an antagonist. We, the audience, want to seek them out. We want to destroy them. We want to kill them even, in that quest. And on that quest, there is meaning. And this is what we're tagging along as the audience. It's strange to think that the possible ingredient, at least as far as stories go, That the strange ingredient to living a fulfilling and possibly meaningful life is someone or something trying to stand in your way. That the greatest motivation for you to accomplish your goal, for you to live your dreams, is that there's something or someone out there trying to stop you. And in that fight is where the meaning can come from. Again, it's a bizarre thought, so let me know what you guys think. Please do give the video a like and subscribe. Please comment down below what you think. Have any of you had that same thought I had as a teenager, kind of really trying to motivate and push yourself to do something, or even now? Because, you know, heck, turns out I'm just as good at procrastinating now, if not better than I was when I was younger. So let me know what you guys think. Is there something that pushed you kind of to do the next step of your goal, next step of your life, and how'd that go? But yeah, let me know down below, and I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm Jeff Cassidy, and this is Fiction Applied.